Hey guys, it's Miss Megan. I hope you guys already watched the video or you read this story. But if you haven't, I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff in the story. So pause the video and go watch the story video first if you haven't already, and then come back. Okay? All right, now that you've watched the video and you've read the story, let's talk about it, okay? So the king, right, he forgave his servant this huge debt that he had. But then the servant didn't forgive someone else who owed him just a little tiny debt. And the king got really angry and threw him in jail, right? And Jesus told this story, he said, to teach them a truth about forgiveness and about God, right? So this is what Jesus said, and this is the part that's hard to understand, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. If you were confused about what it means and what it means that God is like, this is what Jesus said. He said, "This is how my Father in heaven will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart." So that sounds really bad, right? If we don't forgive, God's going to punish us, right? And God's going to throw us into jail. And it sounds like that's what he's saying, right? And that's a really hard truth. But before we talk about that, let's just think about what that means, what happened in the story, right? So the king forgave a huge debt. And that's just like what God has done for us, right? So let's look at the three circles and remember what we've learned about it, right? Remember that we live in this brokenness, that we have been stuck here in sin, and we've not only had bad things happen to us, but we have chosen to do bad things, right? And sin against God. And so we are stuck in this brokenness because of sin, because we've run away from God and said, I think I know better than God. But Jesus came, even though we'd done nothing wrong to deserve it. God sent Jesus to die for us, to rise from the dead, just so that we can get out of our brokenness and turn away from our sin and trust in God. So think about all this that Jesus did. He died for us when we had done nothing good and nothing to deserve it. And he wants us to know him and to follow him and to trust in him even before we've done anything good, right? So when we turn and we trust in him, he's the one that gives us that power to be able to do that. And so what I want you guys to know and understand is think about how much God has forgiven us. Just like that servant and his $1 million debt, that was something that we could never pay back. But God said, you know what, I want to forgive you of that. And so he did, right? And so he has forgiven us of so much, and because of that, we should forgive other people. Does that make sense? So in Ephesians it says, "Forgive one another just as God forgave you because of what Christ has done." God forgave us not because of what we did, but because of what Jesus did for us and dying for us. And then in Colossians it says, "Forgive just as the Lord forgave you." So if we're choosing not to forgive other people, it's basically we're forgetting about all that God has forgiven us. And that's why Jesus is so strong about this. Because he says, if you're forgetting to forgive other people, then you may not understand at all what God has done for you. And if you don't know what God has done for you and you don't choose to follow him and accept his gift and accept his forgiveness, then you are going to be separated from God. And it's going to be bad. It's going to be like that jail. But the thing to focus in on, remember, is God has forgiven us. And we need to accept that gift and choose to follow him and then forgive others because of what he's forgiven us, okay? So, but when you think about it, forgiveness is really hard, right? It's not easy. I have a hard time forgiving people too. But this is the thing to remember too. If you've chosen to follow Jesus, then he can help you, and you can pray to him and you can ask him, say, God, I'm having a hard time forgiving this person. Will you help me? And he will. And this is important too. Forgiving doesn't mean you just forget the bad things that someone has done. It doesn't mean that if someone has hurt you really badly, you have to stay friends and you have to trust them. If somebody does something wrong, you don't have to stay in their lives and you don't have to trust them anymore, right? But what you do have to do is choose to let go of the anger that you have and choose to trust God. There's other verses in the Bible that talk about what God is just and he will punish people for their wrongs. So if someone's hurt you really, really badly, you can know that one day God will make that right. And what you need to do is let go of the anger. And you can tell somebody else if there's something that is wrong, right? But you personally can decide, do you want to hold on to this anger, or do you want to let go and trust that God will make everything right, okay? So I hope that helps you understand forgiveness, but it is a hard thing to understand. So if you ever want to talk more about it, you ever want to understand more about forgiveness, feel free to talk to me or anybody else at Oak Tree, Mr. Aaron, Miss Raquel, Miss Parita, Mr. Randall, Miss Wanda, any of us. We love to talk about Jesus, and we love